Welcome back to the Career Catharsis Show. I'm your host, Neha Khurram. Today, I will be chatting with serial entrepreneur, CTO, Chief Operating Officer, and co-founder Mike Seidle, talking about reimagining recruiting and some of the work him and his team have accomplished with recruiting technology platforms WorkHere and PivotCX. Hi, Mike. It's so great to have you on the Career Catharsis Show.
Thanks, Neha. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. So I'd love for our listeners to get a better understanding of your background. So I understand that you've been in the technology space, the recruiting space, and if you could expand on how you got there.
Oh, wow. I've been in the technology space, I don't know, since the mid 80s. So I've been doing this for a long time, at least as far as tech goes. I got into the recruiting space, would have been right around 2009, and I had an opportunity. I just got done selling an ad agency to the employees of the ad agency and had a chance to go to work for a few years with the founders of Monster.com, who had started a not-for-profit here in Indianapolis called Direct Employers. And so I got my start in recruiting technology really by working with the people that invented the category. And when I left that company, I started the company that I'm with now. I brought actually their CTO with me to start this. So the original team at WorkHere was myself and the very first programmer who actually wrote the very first web-based job board.
Wow. Can you expand a little bit more on your vision when you were building WorkHere and how that vision has evolved over time?
Yeah, so when we started WorkHere, we this was 2015 or so. We were in the middle of the mobile app revolution, and everything was going mobile. And we thought there was a real need for an app that helped people connect to jobs based on location. Hence the name WorkHere. And what ended up happening is we built an app that was a lot like Yelp for jobs. And it worked pretty well for a couple of years. We grew pretty quickly with that. But it was really obvious to us by 2018 or so that that was not going to end up being the future for us. And we got into doing chat because what was going on, we were seeing a lot of employers connecting with candidates, but there was no dialogue, no communication going on there. And so we would go find hundreds of candidates for a company and they would talk to two of them. And we thought that was horrible. What can we do about it? So we started doing the talking with candidates via chat. And that worked really, really well. So you flash forward to 2020, COVID hits, and the old app, the Yelp for Jobs app, we lost almost all of the customers for that product except for one in a 1 month period when COVID hit. And so we looked at that and go, you know what? We have these customers that we're doing this chat service for. Let's take the next year and take this whole COVID time. Let's retool the company, build it around chat, and relaunch this thing with a totally different product. The product, we named it PivotCX for Change Your Candidate Experience. Also because it was kind of a play on the fact we just did a big pivot as a business. And we relaunched our software at the end of December of 2020. And by April of this year, we had already passed up 2020 and 2019's revenue combined. Mm-hmm. So pretty big change for us. And what I think is funny about it is if you look at it from, what we're really doing, mm-hmm. What we ended up doing is finding something that was a lot more valuable than just helping companies find talent by location or helping people find a job by where they live. And we moved over to, hey, how do we make it so every candidate can talk to a live person every time they apply for a job? How can we get rid of this whole black hole that most candidates who apply for a job find themselves in? And how do we make it so the recruiters can actually move fast enough they can hire the best talent that applies instead of whoever's left 3 weeks later?
Love that. Love that. I'd love to understand a little bit more about the product itself. So for any recruiters that might be listening, can you share a little bit more about how the product works?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. We make it so whenever someone applies for a job, be it on your career website, through your applicant tracking system, or even if they just apply on Indeed or LinkedIn or something like that, we hook our chat platform up to all of your different sources of candidates. And then whenever somebody applies,
Mm-hmm.
that triggers a conversation with that candidate. We do the conversations using SMS. And the reason we do, at least in the markets we work in the most, which is North America, SMS is really the best way to reach somebody. If you compare it to email, the average SMS message is read 93% of the time within 3 minutes. So if I send you a text, you're going to get it, you're going to read it. If I send you an email, we're lucky to get a 20% open rate in a 7 days period of time. So, if you want to actually be able to communicate with a candidate, texting them is a good thing. So we make it so that you can have that conversation, and we have all the tools for automating that conversation without losing the ability for the humans to talk to the humans. So we have customers where the workflow is somebody applies for a job on Indeed, they have a quick conversation, get their questions answered, and then let's say they're applying for handling hazmat. They might have to get a Twix card into us. If that's the case, we let them text it in, so they can just hit share on their phone and send in a picture of whatever it is that they need for credentials. And we can take what used to take 3-4 weeks between applying on Indeed, waiting for the recruiters to screen everybody and the hiring manager to screen everybody, and then finally decide to call you back. We can take that down to where it just takes a few minutes. And then when the recruiters actually do start spending time with the candidate, we know they're A, qualified, B, interested in the job, and C, more importantly, we've moved fast enough that they haven't taken the job somewhere else already.
Right. I think with recruiting, speed is everything. And especially in the technology space, I know that there is a bit of a talent war. And I think over the pandemic, we've seen so many new companies emerge, but also all the companies that were doing really well had to pivot, a lot of them, right? So with that, there's just been such a big shift. I think we're going through one of the highest labor shortages for high skilled labor in a while. So that's
Yeah.
something that I think would be worth maybe even talking about. I mean, based off of your experience, what advice would you have for any listeners that may be concerned about the outlook for hiring in 2021?
I would say get ready for it to get worse. What's going on right now? If you go back to 2019, and we had just finished up the year right before COVID hit, and unemployment was at a record low already. We were already at the point where the labor market had lots of gaps in it, and we're up against another big demographic shift, which is by 2035, the U.S. growth rate, like the birth rate and the rate that we get new people, is going to go negative. We're going to start shrinking. And so we're in a period of time right now where we've got to get used to ever shrinking pools of talent if we're going to be successful recruiting. We see it with software developers and engineering talent, management and sales, where it's really hard to find good people. What's been remarkable about 2021 has been, if you think it's bad with engineering talent, wait till you see what it's like for truck drivers. It's
So true.
absolutely amazing the different places that we're seeing these gaps open up, and it's led to we have customers that have had to increase wages monthly this year just to make it so they can get people to respond to their ads on Indeed. And that's going to be a way of life for a while for all of us. It's not going to get easier for a few years, and it honestly may never be a return to what we saw, back in 2009, 2010, where, we had these 8%, 9% unemployment rates, and really, the advantage was all to the employer. Now it very much is a candidate's market, and we've all got to be thinking about what we can do to make our jobs more attractive and make working for our companies more attractive than it is.
Absolutely. I think high skilled labor in particular, they do have a lot more power in terms of negotiation, and they get to be a little bit more selective. So I think that talent branding is going to be super important, having the right tools, that's going to be super important for recruiting. So when I was looking at WorkHere, I noticed, you talk about geofencing and how that relates to recruiting strategy. So curious to know if you could share what geofencing means when it comes to recruiting strategy.
Yeah. So geofencing for us has been, it was the core of our business really
Hmm.
before COVID hit. We were really kind of known as the geofencing recruiting company, and um, we've really moved away from a lot of that, largely because two things. One is right now in mobile advertising, Apple is making some changes to advertising IDs that makes it harder to target people. Location being one of the things that's harder to target. Google's about to do the same thing on Android, and so what we're looking at really is that media has become a little less effective um, than it used to be. So really, a lot of our geofencing game, we still do a lot of it, but it's become a lot less important. And that's really because the bigger problem that most employers have has nothing to do with candidate flow and has everything to do with engagement. Most companies get more than enough applicants. The problem is they take on average 3 weeks between when somebody applies for a job and when a recruiter reaches out to the candidate. So you just got your, I don't know, AWS certified um, engineer in, and you're going to wait until you have 40 of them in, and then let the hiring manager and the recruiter go through who you want to actually talk to. By the time you get to that decision point, all the good candidates are already gone.
Hmm.
And so we've really been focusing on a different problem than just the geofencing. It's really been more about how do we make it so we can somebody just applied to that for that AWS engineer position. How do we get that engaged right now? How do we make the hiring process go fast enough that you've got a shot at hiring that person before, either whatever it was that drove them to look for a job this morning gets fixed, or they find a job with a competitor. So a little different, and probably not an answer you were expecting.
No, I love that. I do think that there's a really big shift in terms of how location is starting to matter less and less. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
the other fun part with this is watching, especially with knowledge workers and highly skilled employees. That is really where the core of the whole work from home versus work in the office debate is really being waged. And for every company I see out there that's trying to pull their people back in the office, all I can tell you is that may be one of the stupidest policies you could ever imagine when it comes to retention. The
Mhm.
easiest way for people to chisel people away from you, same job you have today, except work from home.
Totally. I
I
think
mean, that you're just set up to be poached if you are forcing people to come back to the office.
absolutely. I think flexibility is starting to matter more and more to people, especially since a lot of them have had a taste of it. So companies that are looking to go back to the way things were, it's going to be a really big struggle from, a talent branding and retention perspective. But flipping it on to what job seekers should expect and how they can stand out for a role in tech. So I'm specifically talking, about any listeners that are engineers or product managers, anyone in tech that might be looking to stand out for, their dream company in tech. What can you share about what clients have been telling you, really matters to them?
Yeah. So the challenge most employers with tech have is sorting out people that are actually able to do the job from people that can't. And I'm a software developer. If you want to look at my resume,
Yeah.
I've been building software for a long time. And the hardest thing for me as a business owner is finding engineering talent. The reason it's hard is there's a lot of people that are in there, and I'm not sure if it's because the wages are high, or what it is that makes people go, I want to I can do the software developer job, even though they may not be able to do it. It doesn't matter what technical field it is. There's an awful lot of people in there that we're just not sure about. And so what you can really expect as a job seeker is that you're going to feel like you've been processed like a piece of chicken is what you're going to feel like in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
um, the employers really are putting a lot more testing. They're putting a lot more assessments. They're
Mhm.
putting a lot more hoops for you to jump through.
Mhm.
And it's frustrating for people because we've spent a lot of time and money. Some of us have spent a lot of time building up credentials and have all these certifications and that kind of thing. Or we've been doing a job for, 15, 20 years and yeah, I can do this job. And then when we go in to go interview and they're like, okay, well, we're going to go do a whiteboard session with you and see if you actually, know how to decompose a problem or whatever it is. You're going to have to be okay with some of this. And the reason for it is just the amount of people that are out there that even if held a job title that says they should be qualified. There's just so many people out there that I don't want to necessarily accuse a lot of people of being imposters, but there's a lot of imposters out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that a lot of job titles don't deliver an accurate picture of scope of responsibility and what people have actually achieved. And I think another piece to that is the type of work environment, right? So different company sizes are going to have other players that will take a piece of the puzzle. So I think, it also really depends if you're targeting a startup, a mid-sized company, large-sized company, and like what other players you would need. Like, are you really zeroed in on one technology or one piece of the puzzle? So that's another thing that I think would be really important for anyone that is listening, that's looking to get a job in tech. Another kind of segue here into predicting the future of tech talent recruiting. So I know we talked a little bit about how we're moving away from looking at, location specific talent. We're moving away from, simple processes and, we're developing more robust testing, robust assessments. And we're also looking for a quicker way to engage with talent from the get-go. But what other predictions do you see for specifically tech talent recruiting?
Yeah, so among our customers, what we're seeing a lot of is pushing more of the assessment process earlier in the funnel. So, think less of apply, talk to somebody, and then take an assessment eventually to apply for the job. Maybe have a quick conversation and then go right to some kind of assessment really early in the process. So that's one trend we definitely see a lot of. The other thing that we see are a lot of companies are starting to figure out that just hiring for experience is not the right move. And we're starting to see a lot of companies going, how do we assess people to see what their ability to learn is? How do we figure out how to find instead of somebody that has, 3 years of experience with a certain framework and 5 years of experience with a certain database or whatever, we're seeing a lot more companies look at how do I assess this developer to see if they really can break down a problem and they really can learn new skills on the fly. Because I think we're seeing a lot, believe it or not, with AI moving things a little bit, we're actually in a period of time here where skill sets are being obsoleted faster than I think they ever have been. And so this makes it harder to hire people just based on what did you do at your last job. And honestly, when you're looking at long-term, it's always been a great practice when you're hiring engineering talent to hire people based on what their potential is rather than what their experience is. The reason for it is 2 years from now, whatever experience I come in the door with is probably going to be obsolete. But the potential I have, my ability to learn, my ability to work with my coworkers, my ability to contribute in a meaningful way to the company, that's not going to change.
Yeah, I love that. I do think that a lot of engineering leaders are looking for people that can, like you said, break out a problem, but really what is their learning aptitude and how do we test for that, right? So a lot of the assessments and the hoops have to do with that. And I wish there was a perfect process that we could reference, but I think we're all kind of still building it, right?
There's not one. There's really not. And even if I made the perfect one for my company, it's not going to be the right one for your company because, when it comes to engineering talent, we have to interface with people. And that is different at different companies. The way that you interface, if you've got a really meeting-centric culture where they expect you to stand up and be able to hold a room of 30 people's attention to get anything done, that's a different skill set than a company where We are more regimented, and the managers talk to the managers and then come back with requirements. And it's really important if you're a developer looking for a job, to really understand what you like and what you're good at, and pick your employer wisely, rather than just going, hey, I'm going to this company. It's a big name. I want to work there because it's going to be a great job. It may turn out it's a really awful fit for you, and you're going to be miserable for 18 months and fired in 19.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. So really getting a sense of the team dynamics and the company cultures, as we call it. But, the word culture itself, I think, we talk about it so much, but being able for a company to actually define it, it's an evolving story, but I really like how you broke down, in terms of communication and getting things done. There's meeting heavy companies where everybody has to kind of, be comfortable speaking up to get things done, or else there's sort of like a chain of command in some companies, and that's a little bit different.
It's
Shifting.
so important to ask, to know what you're good at, and B, is you're interview your employer a little bit and ask them what's important there. And if it's a company where your political skills and ability to make your ideas win in a boardroom are more important than your abilities at the keyboard, that's a different talent. And understand what you have as a developer. That makes all the difference in the world. And the faster that you can communicate that to the people interviewing you, the faster both sides can get to a decision where we go, hey, this is a good fit for our company. And then if you're being interviewed, you can go, I really want to work here. This sounds like something that, A, I'll like a lot, and B, I'll be good at.
Absolutely. So interviewing really is a two-way street. So it's important for any job seekers out there to be thinking about some questions that really, I would say, extract the information you need from employers to make a sound decision around your priorities, your deal breakers, and what really matters for you long term, and not just looking at the short term in terms of, oh, really cool brand to add to my resume, or thinking of the perks or some of the bells and whistles or the comp. I know so many people that'll go after a job for compensation, and like 6 months in or even sooner, they're like, didn't make the right choice here. I'm not really happy. I'm not really challenged. So really just going back to what matters to you, and kind of, vetting your employer, I think is so important. And
it's underrated. And I can tell you from being on both sides of the table, especially on the employer side, so few candidates are there to decide if I'm the right employer for them. They're mostly, it's really funny when you're sitting on the interviewer side of the table, what you usually see is somebody that is acting like they will say and do anything to get a job. And it's really bad, because there are really great people that are coming in and they've been taught all their life to do things a certain way, never show a negative, all that stuff. And they're trying to get the job, and that's what they really want. And the truth is, if we were really doing the interview right, we would both be trying to arrive at a mutual decision of, hey, is this a good job for you? Are you going to be able to really, really not just do the job, but can you thrive in this position, right? And on the employer side, we should really be asking, hey, is this person going to be able to be a contributor? Is this going to be a person that makes the people around them better? Is this going to be somebody that I can grow the business around eventually? Is it somebody that is going to be able to learn and handle new technologies as they come up? Because there's never anything new to do in software development, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think there's a real misunderstanding of the role of interviewing, especially that we teach people as they're looking for a job. And, if you're looking for a job, your real role in those interviews should be to figure out if that employer is a good employer for you, and if the role they have for you is one that you'll be able to do well and enjoy doing.
Absolutely. And I know that there's people out there who, might be a bit conscious about paying their bills and might have this urgency to just get back into it, and might, feel like they have to do the job they need to do before they can do the job that they want to do. I just want to stress around that as well. Like, give yourself a timeline. of when you can wait, and that can kind of keep yourself in check. And rather than going for the first thing that comes up, still being true to yourself, being, really cognizant of what matters to you in that process. And I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit to you and your personal, journey in your career, and thinking about a highlight. So I love to ask any of my guests that come on, what's the highlight of your career and why?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
For me, two things. So as I've worked for other people, and as I've been an employee, really the highlight of that experience has been finding situations. Whenever I find something where I'm able to solve a problem in a way nobody else probably could have, and that's happened to me a few times. And a lot of times it's I've always been able to code, and I've always been able to I'm one of these people, I can code and I can hold a boardroom. And so it's been fun to be able to go into situations where we have to sell the organization on doing something and getting that stuff done. So that's always been kind of a highlight when I'm working for someone else. The whole part of being a founder and building companies, I've done it 5 times. And the highlight of that, honestly, is whenever there are times you step back and you realize, wow, I've got 15 families that are counting on this business, and they're all paying their bills, and they're all happy, and they're all getting their, healthcare problems, all that stuff taken care of. So, just looking at, okay, man, I'm making an impact directly on these lives. That's probably the coolest thing.
Absolutely. 5-time founder. I think that's so cool. And yeah, I think just being able to have that impact on people's lives and seeing that you're doing something good in the world is definitely one of the things that our careers can give us. And sometimes when you're in the weeds of it, it's hard to recognize that you're having that impact. So love that you're conscious of it. And
well, every once in a while, you've got to come up for air and look at the big picture. You've got, you get so wrapped up. Doesn't matter if you're working for somebody else or you're running your own company. If you don't stop once in a while and look around and see what the scenery looks like, and you're going to lose sight of why you're really doing what you're doing. There's money and growth and all that stuff is great, but there's a greater purpose for most of us than just that. The money and the accolades of owning a business, all that's honestly the window dressing. And if you don't step back and look at what matters the most, a lot of times you get really burnt out and kind of lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing.
I love that. Yeah, I think that just kind of ties back to knowing your why and being able to look at the bigger picture and appreciate that bigger picture that you're part of. Love it. Thanks so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm sure that listeners have gotten a lot of value in terms of recruiting, career insights, and career growth.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Catharsis Show. If you liked what you heard, be sure to check out previous episodes and subscribe for more. Check out the show notes to connect with Mike or